Hi, I'm Monica Massaglia. I'm part of Group 5, and the author we chose for our author study is Faith Ringwald. The lesson I'm going to create today is based on the story Tar Beach. Here's a little background about the author. The author we chose to focus on for our unit study is Faith Ringwald. Ringwald is an author, an artist, painter, and speaker. She is well known for her story quilts and her storybooks. She began her career as a teacher in New York City, and after receiving her master's degree, became a professor. Since then, she has written many books and created numerous story quilts. Ringwald has received 75 awards for her artwork and storybooks. Here is a little background and summary of the story I chose, Tar Beach. Tar Beach is a story about a young girl named Cassie who lives in Harlem, New York City. As her family gathers on the rooftop deck of their apartment building, Cassie lies on a blanket and looks up at the starry sky. She envisions herself flying over the city and dreams of owning everything she flies over. The theme of freedom is tied into this story because Cassie pictures herself flying freely in the sky and going wherever she wants to go. She imagines a better life for her and her family, where they're not judged by the color of their skin. This theme of freedom is often present in African American literature. Here are several objectives that I want to focus on throughout my lesson. Students will be able to use mental images while listening to the story to either write about or draw illustrations of what is happening in the story. Students will be able to use the mental images they created during the read aloud to create their own unique image of themselves flying over something they dream of owning, something they dream of happening, or a vision of freedom that they have. They will use these mental images to illustrate a piece of a story quilt. Students will be able to become familiar with and learn about the theme of freedom often found in African American literature. The timeline for my lessons will take place over 5 days. On day 1, I will introduce the author, Faith Ringwald. I will use the smartboard to display images of her 2 pieces of artwork, Tar Beach, Women on a Bridge number 1, and also Tar Beach 2. After I display these images, we will engage in a large group discussion, and I'll encourage students to talk about their opinions of the artwork and how it makes them feel. On day 2, we will do the first read aloud of Tar Beach. Students will discuss what they think the story will be about, and I will record their responses on chart paper. As I read, I'm going to ask the students to close their eyes and listen to the story. Students will be encouraged to create mental images of the story as I read. After the story is complete, we'll open our eyes and talk about their mental images as I was reading the story. On day 3, I'll read the story again. As I read aloud the story a second time through, the students will draw illustrations of their mental images created when listening to the story. I'm going to encourage students to think about how Cassie envisions herself flying in the sky and what this has to do with the theme of freedom. On the 4th day, the students will share their illustrations and their mental images with their peers in a large group discussion. We're going to discuss the theme of freedom and how Cassie depicts freedom in the story by flying in the sky with no reservations. On day 5, we will extend this lesson, and each student will create a piece of a story quilt by illustrating a dream they have or a vision of freedom they have, just like Cassie did in the story Tar Beach. I will model a quilt piece by illustrating a dream that I have, which would be flying over the homes of the students in my classroom and seeing them spending quality time with their family. So what will students do to show that they've achieved the objectives in my lesson? Each student will create a piece of a story quilt by using mental images of a dream they have, similar to how Cassie dreams in the story. Their progression in creating these story quilt pieces and the finished product will allow me to see which students achieved the objectives. Discussions about the theme of freedom in Tar Beach will also allow me to see which students comprehend the theme and the plot of the story. How will I know the lesson is successful? I will know if the lesson is successful by how well the children respond to using mental images to create their piece of a story quilt and understand the text. If they do not respond in class discussions or they fail to create a quilt piece, I will know that they have not achieved the objectives and the lesson was not successful. I will maybe need to incorporate more modeling in order to make the lesson more successful depending on student needs. This is the resource I use to help me create my lessons based on mental images. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it.